Thank you for joining us today. I'm Corbin, and here with me is Darren Owen, professional
Good to see you.
farrier
Good to see
for
you, Corbin.
Good to see you. How long you been farriering?
25, 26, 27, somewhere in there. I don't want
Oh,
to tell on
wow.
myself, yeah. Somewhere
Oh,
in that area.
man.
So just kind of getting started, just learning.
Yeah, that's right. That's
Just
right.
learning.
Always learning, right?
Absolutely, just learning.
Well,
Absolutely.
we're happy to have you with us
It's
today.
my pleasure.
And
Absolute pleasure.
thank you for joining us today.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. It really is. I appreciate the opportunity to come down and visit with all the viewers that we have here, and it's looking for an exciting hour.
Absolutely, absolutely. And of course, today we're going to be talking about hoof cracks.
Yep.
Of course, so we figured who better to give us knowledge and share knowledge than a farrier who deals with them every day.
I'll do my best.
Yeah.
I will. I'll do my best to share what experiences I can with everyone here. Give you some insight of what I've seen over the 26, 27 years, and what my colleagues and other farriers and friends and mentors have shared with me. So we'll try to do that in a very short period of time. So
Absolutely.
we'll do the best we can to get that information out there.
That's right. We got about an hour today. And so we're going to move a little bit fast through the presentation. And so if you have any questions after the event that we didn't answer, just message us here on Facebook. Give us a call. Email us at cservice@lifedatalabs.com. We'll be happy to answer them. And so just a few just kind of housekeeping things. Of course, we will have a grand prize giveaway. You can enter that in at any time. You can go to lifedata.live/win. But of course, you're going to want to wait till the end of the presentation when we give away that secret code that'll just help you give extra entries to win. Unfortunately, that is only for the United States. Due to those international giveaway laws, we're just unable to include everybody into that. But that is going on. And for all those who are watching internationally, thank you so much. I've seen Ireland and the UK already. I know we've got some viewers in Canada.
Cool.
So thank you so much. We are so happy to have you. And of course, Darren here, he's been to the UK on our behalf a few times.
I have. I've had the distinct privilege of visiting some of the highest level of eventing competition in the country there in the UK. One being Burley, that anyone in the UK listening knows the level of competition and competitors that are there. Amazing competition. Brahman, I've been up to Brahman as well. Brahman, I think is how we pronounce it in the UK. So wonderful country, and actually we have some slides. At least one I remember I retrieved. I had the privilege to be there, and we have that in our presentation today, actually.
Absolutely, absolutely. And of course, if you've ever joined us before on these live events, you know we're pretty laid back about things, so feel free to drop as many questions and things that you want into the comments. We usually hold off on answering questions till the end of the presentation, just because, again, we've got an hour, and hoof cracks we could talk all week on.
Absolutely.
And still not finish. So we're going to be moving pretty fast, and we'll save those questions toward the end of the presentation. And so, again, hold on till the end, and we'll be happy to tackle those questions and so on. Well, let's, like I said, we only got a little bit of time, so let's jump into this. Again, we're going to be talking about hoof cracks.
Yep.
I know from looking at our comments and messages from people, that's something that almost every horse owner has or is dealing with.
Sure.
And so I guess from the first aspect of things, I think we should just kind of establish what exactly is a hoof crack.
Well, a hoof crack truly, for me, is an early warning sign that the horse, an early warning message, I would say, that the horse has given us to tell us that something needs to be sorted, that something is not completely fitting well for the horse. There are many criteria when we talk about a bunch of criteria that we'll go over here today, what we can in our time, to give us an insight. But essentially what the horse is doing is communicating to us as farriers, horse owners, trainers, veterinarians, whomever may be on the care team of this horse, that something is just not working well. And when we think about the horse and we think about our hooves or our feet, essentially that's where the rubber meets the road. If this horse is struggling from any multiple different facets of husbandry, performance, etc., stress, we're going to see that in the feet. And farriers will often pick up on that and be able to relay that back to the owners and to the trainers and the care providers and the people that are working with the horses. So we do have a couple slides up real quick. We'll go to the first one, and I want to just show you just a little early warning indication that you might see. If you look at this foot, there's a couple of things that you're going to see. You're going to see a little bit of a change in the actual hoof wall itself. You're going to see that little bit of an indentation. You'll see those different lines and strides in the middle of that foot where the crack is down at the bottom. And right then, the farrier and or horse owner should pick up that we have an issue. Now, this is a multifaceted issue, but however, this is an early warning sign that we have difficulty with this particular horse, or we could have difficulty with this horse. So that's just a very small indication of a hoof crack, vertical in nature, but it's going to tell us that something needs to be sorted with this particular horse.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And so we'll take you over real quick and show you a little bit about how we sort that. So now you can see that actual crack is gone.
Go ahead and transition.
And it's now the crack that you'll see on the next slide is already gone. We've taken care of that. We've groomed and trimmed this horse's foot in hopes to bring this horse's foot up underneath of him to alleviate stresses and undue responsibilities for the hoof, in the sense if the hoof is in a position where it's not adequately placed underneath the horse's skeletal system. So you can see the difference right there, because the horn itself is essentially another early warning sign. You can see that deviation, that indentation in the wall. This had been a long-standing problem that I had an opportunity to work on. However, that was an early warning sign as well. You can see that wall where it's essentially deviated in right there. So just kind of a real quick idea of when you think about hoof cracks, what exactly you're going to be looking for. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a major crack. We're looking at a hoof crack that really everyday horse owners are going to be seeing in their feet.
Absolutely. Well, you just kind of made that statement of, that's not a major crack. We all know kind of the differences here. We've got some cracks that are, deep, and you can just tell this is the serious issue. But of course, you kind of have cracks that are a little bit minor and may not seem like a big issue. So
True,
when should these horse owners be concerned?
Well, a crack you should always be concerned. And I don't say that in a dramatic fashion. I say it in such that, again, it's an early warning sign. It's telling you that something needs to be sorted on this horse to alleviate it from becoming exceptionally serious. But when you see cracks, you need to reevaluate where you are with your horse, what you're doing. Is there something that can be improved to help the horse? Are you going through a terrible time in the seasons? You've had excess rain, excess dry. We'll talk about that a little bit as we move forward. But, there's something that horse is telling you that we have some concerns there. That's for sure.
Absolutely. All right. Well, while we're looking at this and kind of diving deep into it, you said, we always should be concerned. What are some of the dangers that can come from these hoof cracks?
Well, just the simple crack that we illustrated just a few minutes ago, if that crack is left unattended, that crack will continue to migrate vertically and will continue to go up further into the foot. It can cause the horse some lameness, some uncomfortableness. We even can start to talk about structural instability, because what happens with a hoof crack is that hoof crack goes up into that vertical crack starts to move up closer toward the coronary band. What ultimately happens is the dynamics and the responsibility of the hoof wall itself is no longer shared. It's then becomes separated. So the actual pressure from the horse pushing down toward the ground, and then you would have ground reaction forces coming back into the hoof, you then end up finding yourself in a place where it's no longer a unified structure to take care of the responsibility that is being asked upon. So when you get a crack that goes up, then the lines of responsibility start to deviate and often can make it worse. So that, like you said, the crack you saw there is not a crack that's super concerning. We addressed it. Horse goes forward. We're going to try to figure out what's going on. We had a few ideas. However, we'll show you another slide that's a much more dramatic example of what happened to a horse in a hoof crack that could really open this horse up to some major problems. And in this particular slide, you see the heel of this particular horse up on toward the quarter, if you will, of that particular horse was actually broken off. It was completely broken, cracked. It cracked all the way to the coronary band. that whole section peeled away. And as you can see, the horse is trying to heal itself, and you can see the tissue regenerating. However, if you look just a little bit up in front of that kind of pinkish area where it's healing up, you see that void that's going in there.
Absolutely.
Well, that void then opens the horse to some severe infection. So in a crack like this, which is much more dramatic, much more concerning, the horse could even be opened up to something that would be absolutely horrible, which we refer to as osteomyelitis. And that's an actual infection of the bone. So when you crack that hoof capsule open to that kind of degree, you really have to be careful as to the care after that, making sure we're keeping things disinfected, making sure it's getting the proper veterinarian and farrier care, and to alleviate and not to allow that horse to find itself in that kind of position.
Absolutely. So kind of what I'm hearing here is that, even those kind of small cracks are open areas for that bacteria to come in and do damage.
Absolutely. And it's just, once that hoof capsule becomes open, it then, again, allows for invasion of your bacterial problems, your fungal problems. And again, most of the time, they don't result in something that significantly serious.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, can we talk a little bit about the different type of cracks?
Oh, sure. There's you'll look and I'm sure as the folks who have logged on and our viewers all over the world are talking about, depends on the region of the country or the world that you live in. Cracks they'll talk about cracks. We'll call them sand cracks. We'll call them toe cracks. We'll call them heel cracks. We'll call them grass cracks. There's an immense name, depending on where you live in the world, of what we refer to as hoof cracks. However, the reality, I like to kind of simplify things a little bit and realize that hoof cracks either go vertically, up and down, or they go horizontal. Now, all of those hoof crack names I just talked to you about will fall in one of those categories. And so it makes it a little easier for us to say they're either vertical crack or horizontal crack. And that, when you think about that conversation, you approach vertical cracks different than you would a horizontal crack. And there's reasons behind why a horse would obtain a horizontal crack or why the horse could obtain a vertical crack.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, can we talk about how, some of these cracks are developed? And
yeah, sure. I think our next slide would give you an idea of kind of like what someone may see, our horse owner may see in regards to, their everyday horse, right? So when you think about that, if we look at the unshod foot, that may be what we would see as a horse that lives in a pasture. Maybe this horse could be essentially out 24/7. They've had some good rain, and the grass has been a little wet in combination with the dew that's on it in the morning time or late evening. And that kind of stuff that you're seeing on that particular horse, that's not something that we get amazingly upset about. It's easily resolved, simply can be resolved in the change of the seasons, as well as the care of the farrier and the horse owner as well. And then the other one, you see that particular horse is wearing a shoe to help that horse. But often as we have horses that are competition horses that are really, really working hard, they're exposed to a lot of bathing. And so not only are they're out in weather where they may have some rain or thunderstorms moving through the time of the year, but then they're also exposed to the wash rack. So they go out, they do their work, they get sweaty, and rightfully so, they need to be rinsed off and cleaned. However, their feet are staying wet, on a lot. When you look at a 24-hour period, their feet are staying wet the majority of time. And that makes it very difficult for us, one, for shoe retention, once for the horn structure to be solid and be able to deal with the responsibilities that this horse's job is, whatever that might be.
Absolutely. And this might seem like a silly question, but I know that we probably have viewers wondering, are there any types of breeds that seem to be a little bit more prone to hoof cracks?
I can't say that I really see one particular breed of horse that really is more troublesome than the others. What I really see more is I see things that kind of point into like what the horse's job is, what kind of stresses are are applied to the hoof capsule, what it actually is asked of it, if you will. And from there, you might say, for example, well, we say thoroughbred racehorse. Well, if we think about what's asked of a thoroughbred racehorse, and we think about its husbandry and its care and what have you, well, you might see an increased number of problems in a thoroughbred racehorse. You may see, for example, in a standardbred racehorse that pulls the sulkies, you may see an increased problem in a crack, say quarter cracks. They're usually a bit of a larger conversation in our racing horses. But those cracks are there because, as we said, it's a warning message because something is going on. And often in those horses, it's the stress and the work that they're asked to do as performance horses. And so, the hoof can take a certain amount. But again, if all of these parts and pieces aren't exactly in place, it lessens the ability of the horse and its hoof or any other part of it, if you will, in the curve of performance. It lessens its ability to do its job.
Absolutely.
So it's just huge that we recognize these things and help give the horse the best advantage we can.
Absolutely. And I really like the way you kind of establish that as these are the warning signs.
Sure.
It almost makes me think of, when you think about the horse, those hoofs are, kind of that foundation of the horse. Everyone's heard it, no hoof, no horse. It's a lot like a house. When you start having problems with your house and the foundation, you start seeing cracks in the walls and so on. So it's very kind of similar like that with hoofs.
It is. And, when we think about it, kind of an interesting thing when we talk about the foundation, if you're going to say that, well, we think about, we also often, one of the things we talk about is environment, right? It's often, very often talked about. So an example of that might be, if you think about your kitchen sponge, right? Everyone will have a kitchen sponge at home, and you go into your kitchen and you grab your kitchen sponge to do your dishes and whatever you're going to do. Well, you could take that kitchen sponge and you can push down on that sponge just like I could this particular model here as hard as I could. The sponge is not going to go anywhere. If I wet that sponge and saturate it with water and push down on it, well, that sponge is going to go completely flat to the countertop of the kitchen. So the integrity is infected in that of the horse itself as it's exposed to a significant amount of excessive moisture. This is just one example, for that we're talking about today. But the horse has the ability to regulate moisture and produce moisture from the interior aspect of his body, her body, as well as they can the outside. So depending on the environment that the horse is living in, it has the ability to do that. And so when I say that, it can actually pull moisture from the inside if need be. And then at the same time, if it's being exposed to heavy moisture, well, then it may not need to do that.
Absolutely. And then on the reverse side of it, going back to your sponge aspect, if you have a sponge that's extremely dried out, it becomes a lot more fragile and tends to...
Right. The edges might peel up on your sponge. It may become a little bit chafed, if you will, on the sides and things of that nature. So the sponge is kind of just a good analogy, if you will. When you think about horses' feet, we know they're, essentially they're by definition hair that is all essentially molded together. The horn, if you look at the bottom of the horse's foot and you get a freshly trimmed foot, especially a dark colored foot, you can look and see all the dots in there. And those are all of the horse hair, if we will. And I think we did a video a while back. I happened to run across a horse that had been exposed to a lot of afternoon showers, and in the lateral portion of the horse, you could see hair, basically, just strings of hair that all were coming out of the side. And that's just essentially where that horse's hoof wall has just deteriorated to the point where all of the glue, if you will, is gone out of the wall and the hair is just sticking out of the side. So when we think about them in that category, in that capacity, it gives us a better understanding with the sponge analogy, how when that becomes so saturated, it makes it harder for it to do its job in a correct way.
Absolutely. Well, I guess let's dive into a little bit more about what causes these hoof cracks to develop. And we've touched on the environment a little bit, maybe dive into a little bit of that and get into some management and different things that might also
Sure.
These
And before we go, let's kind of take our viewers to what's a vertical crack and what's a horizontal crack, just so they can have an idea. And this is a bit of a dramatic example of a vertical crack that we'll show them. But let's show them this vertical crack. And again, it's just a pretty dramatic one that you see right there. So that one right there, you can see a very sharp vertical crack going up through the toe area of this poor dorsal wall area of this particular horse. And then we'll move over to the next one, and you'll get to see what we mean. Essentially, we'll find we have one here. We're going to get that guy.
No, so go back to that. Should be, try slide 5.
So I was just trying to give you an idea of the difference. So there's the vertical. Okay.
Okay.
Well, very good. Well, essentially, what we're just trying to show you is when we do the category of them, is that one's running up and down from the ground straight up to the coronary band, and then the horizontal crack is going to be going this way, going essentially, we would say, parallel with the coronary band. An example of that, just so our viewers have an understanding of what I'm speaking of, your horizontal cracks essentially are going to be a result of some sort of what we would refer to as a gravel. We may refer to it. There we are. We've been able to pull that up for you. Here we go. And so you can see there's the horizontal one, and that's essentially something that broke out the coronary band. There was a sepsis or an infected canal that moved its way up from the ground surface, went into lamina right alongside the sole, the wall, and kind of essentially migrated its way all the way up the hoof, causing the horse excruciating pain, and then pops out right at the coronary band where the hoof meets the hair. And when it does, it leaves essentially a scar. We could call that a scar. It's a disruption in the production of the actual hoof wall itself, where it's produced. We all know that the coronary band has its own array of hair, essentially tubulas that produce the actual wall. And so when it's disturbed, it then ends up not being able to produce, interrupted, I should say is a better word. It's not able to produce the wall as it is in the rest of the coronary band. So you'll have that line that'll be there. It'll be a horizontal line, and it'll come down. And it's not hugely concerning. It's more for me. It's more of a scar from the actual what we would refer to as a gravel, or again a sepsis area that's entered. It's more concerning if it's to the heel of the horse. Lots of pressure in the heel of the horse, and we also worry about, like you saw in that earlier picture, if that heel area shears off under those immense pressures, you can have a bigger problem. But in this particular area, most of us have probably experienced these. They'll move on down, and as they move down, we just keep them clean. We'll use topicals to keep them clean. We make sure there's no debris in them. The big worry is on an unshod horse, if a horse is not wearing shoes, as that particular region gets down close to the ground, we'll estimate, say, 1 inch to 1.5 inches, we really have to be watching, because underneath that wall, behind that wall, there's no attachment. There's no foundation for that wall. So as that thing gets right on down to 1/2, 3/4 of an inch from the ground, often it's going to break back. And when it breaks back or peels back, if it stays in that area where the infection was, and there's no live tissue behind it, not so big of a concern for us. But if it breaks back, very similar to pulling your fingernail back into sensitive tissue, now your horse is going to be uncomfortable and or lame again. So often as farriers, we'll watch those, and as they get towards the ground, we'll it's kind of a matter of timing, and we'll wait and see as they get toward that ground, and we'll just take our hoof knife and just cut those particular areas away, and then that way the horse doesn't have to worry about it being pulled back, and works out really well for them. And those are in the aspect of the horizontal cracks for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Makes sense. We did have a quick question real quick that
Sure.
I think that we could jump into, because we've kind of been talking about the different kind of qualities of the hoof and so on. And we actually had the question of are white hoofs softer than darker hoofs?
That conversation often comes up, and I have never seen, there may be, I have never seen any evidence-based research that's told me that a white hoof is softer than a black hoof. I think where that conversation develops potentially is the fact that we can see so much more in a white hoof. We can see bruising in a white hoof. We can see that through that white horn. We can see if the horse has like impacted some dirt, if there's wall separations in the walls, we can see that. So I think the idea that we can see more, for example, you can't see a bruise on a black horse per se, a black-footed horse per se, I think is where some of that originated from. But me personally, I've never seen any evidence-based research that would tell me that a white foot is softer than a black hoof. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, never seen one like that. So, but interesting topic while we're talking about hooves and we're talking about colors, percentages of hoof, moisture in the hoof, because we had a big conversation a moment ago about the moisture of the hoof and what have you and how it is. So I'm going to ask to be able to zoom this in for everyone, because what we're going to talk about and see, which is a very interesting topic, is that the actual hoof has different percentages of moisture in different parts. I find that intriguing myself, but then when I look back and I think about it and I think about what these parts do and how they may add to our horse's hoof capsule and keeping it healthy to avoid cracks, to avoid other particular problems that the hoof may be exposed to, of these three parts being the frog, the sole, and the wall, each one of these under the same conditions is going to have a different moisture level. So the question would be, which one do you think has the highest level of moisture in it?
Well, to me, when we're looking at that kind of anatomy of the hoof there, I would have to say kind of that kind of sole frog area would have the most moisture.
You know, and that's great, Corbin. That's exactly right. The frog contains the highest level of moisture. Numbers are going to put us, research is going to put us somewhere around the 50% number is where it's going to put us. 45 to 50% is where the research will put us. And when we think about what the frog does and its ability to dissipate concussion in a dynamic state, having that moisture in there works wonderfully. And we say to ourselves, well, why does that do that? What makes it so strong? Well, one of the things that I think that for me that I think about is when we think about water, we can't compress water. So when you think about this frog being 50% water, as this frog hits the ground and this hoof capsule begins to absorb the ground reaction forces and the stress from that particular stride of the horse, that helps this horse dissipate that concussion very quickly in the lower limb to avoid any particular problems up or higher in the limb. The sole then goes down to about 33%. And then last but not least, what we would refer to as the static weight bearing structure of this horse, what we're talking about is the wall, which is our conversation today about, wall cracks and cracks in the horse's foot. We're down to 25%, which makes it, again, more rigid in that region. So just interesting thought. I think that the viewers would like to know, especially in the conversation about how moisture affects our horse's feet, and we think about hoof cracks. I thought that was an interesting thing to bring out to our viewers to be able to see that.
Absolutely. Well, kind of talking about moisture, and we did have a question here where, someone asked about the difference between, hot and cold, and does that make a difference with the hoof cracks? Do you want to dive into some of that environmental things, or?
Well, sure. If we're gonna, make sure I have clarity on the question. So are they talking about?
I can read it for you.
Well,
directly.
just a little, just to make sure I addressed your thoughts.
Do cracks vary in relation to hot versus? Oh, I'm sorry, shoeing. Hot versus cold shoeing. So kind of
Yes.
off topic.
Well, I would have to say that if one particular aspect of a hoof capsule that I would say benefits tremendously from hot shoeing is the fact that when a horse the farrier has the ability and is able to properly hot seat a horse's foot, you then have the perfect union between the shoe and the horse's foot. So there's no unevenness there, and the stresses at that point between the shoe and the ground bearing surface of that horse's foot are completely, that shoe foot purchase is completely, or that shoe surface is completely even. Mm-hmm. There's no ripples, where it's very hard at times to be able to, when you're cold shoeing horses, it's a little bit hard sometimes to make sure that you have that horse's foot completely flat, we'll call it, completely rasped, completely flat. We do great jobs as farriers. We are pretty darn good at getting it that way, but to take out that imperfection of knowing that that is a completely flat surface, putting that hot shoe on there makes it, that union between the shoe and the foot, absolutely no wrinkles, and it's perfectly flat. So I think hot shoeing in that regard would be very beneficial. It also often will take care of localized bacteria and fungus in that region. So if you have something that's trying to get in the horse's foot and you take care of the bacteria and fungus, then you alleviate any small wall separation areas or any chipping or cracking in that region.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so that's very helpful for the horse there as well.
All right. Well, I know I've kind of gotten us a little bit off topic on the way we were going.
No, good.
So yeah. So where do you want to go to next?
Well, let's talk about you were talking about the viewer asked about hot shoeing, cold shoeing. So that kind of brings us to, as I was talking about, I used the word flat because often in the farrier world and veterinarian world, we talk about hoof balance. I was watching one of my colleagues the other day. He was doing a podcast. He was invited to do a podcast, and the person he was doing the podcast with asked him the question, said, "Hey, what? Tell me about hoof balance." And he said, the word hoof balance just sets my hair on fire. And I kind of chuckled when I heard that and kind of laughed. And I think that's probably a good thing. And when I say that is because it's going to vary. There's so many facets of hoof balance. And the difficult thing is hoof balance affects hoof cracks. Especially vertical hoof cracks. When you think about vertical hoof cracks and you think about the downward weight that's coming down on those hooves from the horse itself, balance is key. But is that static balance with the horse standing still in a wash rack or shoeing rack? Or is that the horse going over a 3-foot jump? Is that the horse that's pinning cows? Is that the horse that's running barrels? Is that the hunter jumper? Is that the race horse? They all have different jobs. So the attention to detail from the practitioners that are working on these horses, the veterinarians, the farriers, it has to be critical because each one of these horses is doing their work in a way in which is unique. So when we think about hoof balance and how do we address hoof balance to then mitigate hoof cracks, the attention to detail that has to go into that aspect of shoeing has to be second to none. You really, really have to be there and pay attention to what you're doing to make sure that you're looking at the static and the dynamic aspect of the horse and what the horse is truly doing for a living to be able to address those cracks. So that's kind of another big topic that I think about when I think about that. And then, not to mention, we haven't even gotten into, but one of the things that you and I had discussed earlier was the conformation of the horse. So we think about static balance, we think about dynamic balance, and then all that's going to be individualized to the conformation of the horse. And does the horse have any limb deviations? And if the horse has limb deviations, which one of the limb deviations does that horse have? Or does it have multiple limb deviations? And how do they affect the foot? So huge question that really takes way more than our limited amount of time to discuss. But when I have the privilege to speak to viewers and or my clients that are asking me that question, the easiest analogy that I can bring up is if you were to take a water balloon, fill the water balloon completely full with water, so it's even in its roundness, and then you take a broomstick and you push down into that water balloon and you put it in, and you have the ability to determine what is dead center, and there's equal parts of water all the way around that balloon. Now, for our viewing purpose or for our conversation today, the balloon is the hoof capsule. The broomstick is the horse's leg. So if we move that broomstick one way or the other in that hoof capsule, we're going to change the water in the actual balloon. We're going to change the percentage of water that may be on the left or the percentage of water that's on the right, or that's in what we would call the dorsal wall or the front of the horse, or back and forth. So when you move that broomstick in the sense of a limb deviation, whether it be an angular deviation, whether it be a rotational deviation, or in some cases even a flexural deviation where soft tissue changes the hoof capsule itself, you're going to have a different aspect of responsibility for that hoof capsule.
Mm-hmm.
So in doing so, that it's only in itself leads to responsibilities for the hoof itself, a different responsibility. So, when you have if you have a limb deviation, one side of the hoof may have more responsibility in a dynamic state upon landing than the other one would.
Mm-hmm.
So we really have to, again, it's this very complicated conversation, and we really have to pay attention to the finite details to be able to help our horses the best.
Absolutely.
We really do.
Absolutely.
I think you brought up some other things we talked about. We talked about genetics. Of course, that's, something you think about, the mares, the stallions, looking at these feet and trying to get good solid feet, genetically, good solid walls, good quality feet. That's part of this conversation as well. It's not something that falls into the farriery world nearly as much, but it's in the overall horse world and the quality of the horse. And we were talking about environment. We do have a picture that popped up that gives you an idea of a horse that's in a very arid environment. And so you can see that this particular horse that we took a quick picture of when we were thinking about environment, different, back to one of the questions that we had that Corbin and I were talking about. And you can see the picture you're seeing right now is a picture of a horse that's in a very arid environment, very, very dry. And you can essentially see what those particular feet look like. And then we would transition as we're getting ready to come into winter. And so now the horses are going to be exposed to potentially snow, depending on where you live in the world. May or may not be getting any snow, but this is what these horses are going to be exposed to.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a vast transition, Corbin.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about arid desert climate type particular areas, dry, lava rock, things of that nature these horses are trying to transverse into and move across and do the work. And then you're going to have a horse that's in the snow. Mm-hmm. So it gives you the really unique perspective of how horses' feet are and how versatile they really are, and the sense of the way that they're able to function and help us as horse owners, riders, and up to Olympic equestrians be able to do our job. Mm-hmm. And so a great photograph. I'm proud of these. I will pop over, and this is for my viewers in the UK. As you can see in the back, it says British Eventing. This is for my folks in the UK. I had the privilege of taking these pictures at one of the eventing competition I was so privileged to attend in your country. And can you even begin to imagine the stress that's going to be on those two forelimbs and or feet as that horse comes over that jump? I mean, just take a minute and think about that.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
I mean, the forces and concussion of whatever this animal may weigh. These animals are easily somewhere in our unit of measurement. Will be in pounds. They'll be in kilos. But we're thinking about that. These horses are 1,000, 1,200, 1,300, 1,400 pounds, and how that converts to kilos, I'm not 100% sure. But it's amazing. The work. So when we think about our hoof cracks, I think we just really have to look deeply into what these horses are doing, mm-hmm. and how strong they truly are. How strong these feet really are, and how they're built.
And and also kind of goes back to as the horse owner, trying to figure out exactly what's causing those hoof cracks. Whether it is those environmental changes, whether it's the activity you're putting the horse through, whether it's genetics or nutrition, whatever that may be. Sure. Those are all things you've got to consider. What your horse is doing and what's happening to figure out where in the world what's causing these hoof cracks to come up for your horse.
Sure, absolutely, and they and there's such the list is long. I mean, I don't think that any of us can fool ourselves and think that the list isn't long of how we properly take care of our horses and keep things sorted and continue to ask them to do their work and what they do. And of course, we can't control the elements often. We can't control, the rain. We can't control the mud. We can't control some of these things that they're exposed to. So you're exactly right. That there is a vast a vast amount of things that need to be discussed. And essentially our list is very long. And then, environment, and we talk about that. We talk about management. We talk about genetics. We talk about nutrition. We talk about so many different things to keep our horses up fit and able to do the work.
Absolutely.
And avoid quarter cracks or toe cracks or whatever crack again, I like to keep them simple, horizontal or vertical cracks. And we try to avoid those, but they're truly inevitable. I mean, we're asking so much of these horses, it's often inevitable, even in the transition of, if you're taking your horse from your horse is shod, and you're going to, change them, and you decide, well, we're going to let the horse be barefoot for a while. You often will see areas as that horse begins to transition. You'll see the wall will peel up and it'll get a bit untidy. Essentially, it's just that horse transitioning into the foot being barefoot. So you'll see those kind of things as well.
Absolutely. And even another big one that we didn't even touch on there was, terrain.
Oh, sure.
We talked about it, I guess, a little bit. We talked about the lava rock and the competing grounds, or if you're, riding on the road or riding in the ground, it's all those will play an impact as well.
Sure. And I think a great point. And I think we brought a video.
Yep. You want to show that video?
Believe. Sure. Let's just grab that video up and show folks some of the other challenges that they're going to be that the horse would be exposed to, and so the different type of terrain that they're working on. Like you see, the jumping horse was on grass, but this particular video, these particular horses are working on tarmac. And so when they're going down, they're on tarmac. They are shot. So your lead horse is going to be on the high side, and your secondary horse will be on the inside. So one of their feet is going to be a little bit higher than their other foot as they transverse down the tarmac. That in its own self, the landing is different for these horses. So those are the things that we just have to, as equestrians, we just have to keep that in our mind and understand what it is, again, that we're asking them to do, so that we're ahead of these particular problems that we may. So for me, as a farrier, if I have the privilege to shoe your horse, or the privilege to shoe anyone's horse that happens to be with us today, I don't shoe your horse for today. I shoe your horse for 4 weeks away, so that I know what I'm going to have, or I try to know what I'm going to have in 4 weeks. Because if I shoe your horse now, then I'm always going to be behind your horse, because that horse is leading the way. And if I try to shoe just for today, without any anticipation of what this horse is going to be doing, what his job is, his terrain, what it's going to be faced with environment, then I'm going to always be behind. So my philosophy as a farrier is I want to shoe that horse. So when I come back in 4, some intervals will be 5 or 6. I like to keep them shorter myself. As I do that, I want these horses I want to essentially have a good idea of what I'm going to see when I come back. And that way, one of those things, I don't have a wall that starts to migrate out. If the wall starts to migrate, well, then what happens? It gets weak and cracks. And I open this horse up, predispose it essentially to wall cracks.
Absolutely.
And the vertical in nature.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we, I guess, I guess we can move into what can a horse owner do? I mean, do you have any thoughts on that? Or
well, yeah, that's kind of the big question as we are moving forward. I'm seeing a lot of people asking, well, our shoes are important. What, will the shoes be used to help treat these cracks? What topicals do I need to be using? And what do I do at this aspect when I start reaching the coronary band? Those type of questions are coming in. So yeah, let's talk about some steps that these horse owners can take as far as treating the crack and trying to help pull things back and kind of tighten up that hoof. And
well, my first thing would be to applaud everyone who, I obviously have no idea who's out there. All I can do is applaud you for logging on, applaud you for your interest in taking an hour out of your day. I know that everyone that's logged on is exceptionally busy. and they have lots of things to do in their daily life. And I just want to first thank you for your time. That's the first thing they can do. Is they're seeking education. They're seeking ways of how do I take care of this particular problematic situation, and to take a little bit of time out of your day to do that is going to be huge. It's going to be a big thing. Their attention to detail, following some of these things that you and I talked about, their own husbandry, recognizing the excessive rain, like we talked about. For example, the horse can, we think about the moisture in the horse's foot. We think about it as a systemic versus environment. So what does that mean when you say systemic versus environment? Well, what it means is the systemic aspect is if the horse is in a position that it needs to produce moisture to take care of his own feet, he or she has the ability, as we discussed earlier. The environment is X amount of moisture coming from the outside. So they can monitor that. Is it super dry? Has it been really, really dry? Does my horse need a little something topical to take care of that? Does my horse need a little something to take care of potential thrush, or I'll just use the word bacteria, or potential fungus? Does my horse need some of those things? Because if those things gain a foothold, then you're going to have a hoof crack, or you're going to have a chip, and the chip goes to the crack, et cetera, et cetera. Little CD toe areas open up. You get a bacterial infection. It eats away in the toe of the horse's foot, and then when it eats the structural integrity from the inside, you get a hoof crack, a toe crack, a vertical crack, right? That's what we have. Absolutely. So they can recognize things on their side in that regard, and they can mitigate so many of these things simply by understanding how they best can be helpful in that particular regard. So that's some great thoughts there that a horse owner can do.
Absolutely. And of course, another kind of big kind of thought and understanding that a lot of horse owners kind of need to think about is, these hoof cracks don't necessarily heal, right? I mean, those cracks have to actually grow out.
Correct.
And if that hoof is not producing good quality hoof, good quality strength, then that crack is just going to continue, and things aren't going to get any better.
Exactly
right? You got to produce that good quality hoof. So how are they going to do that? How are they going to kind of take that step in treating the crack, through that management?
Well, we'll talk about my responsibility, farrier responsibility, and thank you for the thought there. The horse owner's responsibility is going to be the things we talked about earlier, recognizing the conditions the horse is exposed to, and try to mitigate maybe some bathing in the wash rack, if they can sponge them instead of bathe them, if they can do some different things to help us there, topical antimicrobials, things of that nature. But my job, when I think about hoof cracks and what I can do to help this particular horse, is I know I need to keep this horse on a close shoeing interval. If the horse is shod and or trimmed, I want to keep it on a close interval. Depending on the horse's job, what its responsibilities are, that interval for me is going to be somewhere between 4 and 5 weeks. The evidence-based research is clear. It's not blurred in any way, shape, or form, that if that foot grows away from its foundational support from the inside, you're going to have hoof capsular deviation. When you have hoof capsular deviation, you're going to add stress to that hoof capsule, and you're going to add stress to the soft tissue of the horse. Very clear, the evidence, the work has been done. Very clear for me. So I want to make sure that I keep that horse on a very close interval so that I don't allow it to deviate from its foundation. And when I say the foundation, let's think about the inside of the horse's foot. You have your coffin bone in there. Your hoof capsule is attached to the coffin bone via the lamina. And then as that hoof capsule grows down, you have your sole underneath. And as it grows away from that foundation of support, being that actual coffin bone, if it has any of the limb deviations that we all discussed earlier, the angular, the rotational, the flexural, any of those deviations, the hoof capsule will then begin to show those deviations very clear, right? It'll be able to show the result of those deviations, I should say. So keeping them on a short interval is critical, and then I just provided you the reasons why. Often you'll if you can get them tidied up like that and get them on a short interval, the cracking and things of that they kind of go away, essentially go away for us. So we're going to try to do that. We're going to try to keep that schedule really great. It would be my job if we ran into a horse that had a crack. It'd be my job to provide some sort of mitigation. So if it's maybe if I had a horse that was barefoot, I would recommend that they need, depending on the crack itself, I may recommend that we shoe the horse to stabilize it for that period of time, because you say the crack's not going away. Once the crack is there, the crack is not going to glue itself back together. It's not going to, the hoof capsule, the wall is not going to join back together. It actually has to grow down from the highest point of that crack to the ground, and then we can cut it out as farriers. We can trim that horn off, and then you'll have a nice solid hoof again. But you have to fix it. You have to take care of it. So if maybe we have a barefoot horse, we would go into just a simple, very easy shoe for that period of time until we could get, after getting that done, the horse grows crack out and we can take shoe back off if we prefer to have the horse barefoot. But we have to address that. Maybe the horse is shod and we need some help. We'll show you really quick one particular fairly easy way. We can staple them. We can take some of those aggravating toe cracks that we have occasionally, and we can just put a staple up at the top. We can stabilize that horn to keep it from splitting and going up any further. And then as that particular wall grows down, it's solid from that staple up, and just our crack is gone. But you don't want to ignore those. Again, they're early warning, early signs something's wrong, and they're all important. None of them are something that you don't want to take care of. These particular cracks, that's a very small vertical crack in nature, but it tells me something wasn't just right with that. And we had to make some adjustments in these particular cases. But the next thing you would think about in some of the larger ones would be things that we would have to do, would be patching, for example. Some of these larger, more invasive, like the larger vertical crack we saw earlier in the presentation, those cracks are going to have to be patched, and you're going to have to be very concerned about infection. You're going to have to put either acrylic patches on them, if they have fiber in them, we put acrylic patches on them. With the fiber, we'll even use some aluminum at times to screw in to patch these, depending on the seriousness of them. They're stitched. There are some practitioners that will actually drill holes through, and they'll actually put wires and they stitch them together. But one of the key things you have to worry about, and is often needs to be checked first and foremost, is this an impingement crack, or is this a crack that opens up when the horse's foot is asked to load and there's weight put on it? Not all hoof cracks open up. A lot of times when you lift up the other horse's leg, say it's a front foot and you're working on front limb, front hoof, and you lift up the other hoof, well, that crack will close. Kind of counterintuitive to what we're thinking, right? But you have to know that because if you were to lace that up, well, now you've taken what was a bad thing and you made it twice as bad, right? So we have to first identify, are these cracks that open under pressure, or are these cracks that are impingement cracks? And a lot of it depends on the locations, where they are on the horse's feet. So as a farrier, I have to be able to identify those for the well-being of the horse. And how do we do? We patch them and things of that nature. What do we do with them? And then just some other things. If it's a little bit easier crack, we worry about pressure. Where's the pressure coming from? Looking at the conformation, looking at limb deviations, looking at these things. When we select a shoe to put on there to stabilize the hoof, a quick example of that would be a 3/4 shoe, meaning that just a regular shoe that we're all used to seeing. Starts at the toe, it comes down, it's open in the back, 3/4 shoe. That lets a horse's foot work back and forth, and also up and down, side to side this way. So if you look at the back of the foot, it's going to go this way, my fist being the heels of the horse, and the shoe will allow the horse's foot to do this. What we'll most times choose will be a bar shoe, and the bar shoe will still let the horse's foot open and close this way, but won't let it shear this way. So we'll choose that. We'll offload the weight under the crack, stabilize everything, allow it to grow out. As you say, they don't heal, so you have to take care of them. And then we may be able to go back to something different after we've done it that way. Is another way that we can actually handle them as well. And then you don't want to get any nails near there. If you have a crack on one side, maybe you only do 2 nails on one side and 3 on the other, or the practitioner will make that choice how they want to do it. But that's just kind of an elementary overview of what what goes into looking at these cracks and how a farrier, as you asked, what responsibilities would be we would have to taking care of that horse.
Okay. Well, of course, you're only seeing these horses every 6 weeks, and that's if
4 to 6 weeks.
If they're staying within the schedule and so on.
Yeah.
So what's the number one thing that you want to see those horse owners, doing in between those visits?
Well, I want them to take care of the health of the foot.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I'm going to be, in the summer months, if you will, I'm going to ask, can you sponge instead of bathe all the time? That's what I'm going to ask,
Mm-hmm.
because they're getting so much water. If you have any rain moving through, thunderstorms, wash racks, so on. So I'm going to ask, maybe can they sponge them if they have just a light hack and it's nothing quite as bad, if they can. Try to keep them, recognized, keep them dry. Try to keep them taken care of in the sense of, if you can keep a nice little topical on them to help maintain them in that regard, that's always helpful for us as well. Because if we can, bacteria and fungus is part of a horse's foot's conversation. That's just always going to be, always is for us. So if we can mitigate some of that and just kind of hold it at bay, it's going to be there. We know it's going to be there. But if we can mitigate some of that, that's really what irrigate really gets after them. Simple things like the frequent stall cleaning, because we both know, or all of us know, that urine is really detrimental to horses' feet. So cleaning our bedding and keeping those things good on their behalf and their grooms and what have you is always a good thing too, to keep that environment nice and clean. That helps our feet as well, out of the manure and urine that really breaks a horse's foot down badly. So that's what they can do. I mean, really just everyday housekeeping and attention to detail makes our job a lot easier and keeps the horse up on its feet. They enjoy the horse much more.
Mm-hmm.
Horse's ability to be successful increases dramatically because he or she's more comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
and they're able to have a wonderful time and enjoy the horse.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Do you have any other tips or suggestions as far as treating the crack?
No, I don't. We have, they're just, that was a little brief overview of different
Mm-hmm.
things we do for them. We patch them, we shoe, we do different things. But no, I don't have any particular thing right off top.
I know, something that Mr. Mike Barker always says is it's always easier to prevent than it is to treat.
Absolutely.
So do you have any tips as far as preventing? How do we keep these hoof cracks just from coming?
Well, it's just part of the equation. It's
Mm-hmm.
part of the conversation. I mean, we would have to basically review our hour's time of the topics that we talked about. All of those topics are relevant. All of those topics are important. And it's just being part of your horse's life, being part of that every day for he or she, and understanding what's being asked of them. And if
Mm-hmm.
you're close enough to them and you spend time with them, you really can see small things that you can mitigate that keep hoof quality and hoof cracks at bay. You really don't have that kind of problem.
Yeah, understandable. All right, here in a little bit, we're going to open up the floor to some questions. We're going to start working towards closing out the conversation here. And of course, again, we'll be talking about the giveaway, and again, let you guys answer ask questions for Darren here. But, one of the things that you talked about, applying topicals. We've talked a little bit about, nutrition and how that's important and so on. Let's talk about some of the products we've got here. I know that, you have been a long time Life Data user and believer, especially in your own practice. Sure. Let's talk about how you use some of these products in your practice and with your horse owners.
Well, again, the analogy thing works so well because often, we can't all be expected to know everything. Mm-hmm. It's not possible when it comes to horses. We can't do that. So I use the analogy when I think about the wonderful, and I like to refer to them as wellness tools. Mm-hmm. For me as a farrier, what we make here at Life Data Labs, they're wellness tools. And so, for example, our double strength farriers formula, what that does for me as a farrier is it creates that hoof capsule. We use an analogy. I'm working on something that is robust and is strong, it's durable, It can mitigate a lot of the stress and or pressures that are put on our horse's feet, responsibilities, to the point where I find myself in a position where the horse and the horse owner are much happier. The horse's hoof capsule is healthy, and the horse itself is able to do its work. So that without it, the hoof capsule, your walls may not be as thick. You may not be able to create that really robust foot that then, is inclusive of the frog. We talked earlier about the frog and its ability, what it does. It's the sole of the horse's foot is essentially, under there as well, for if the horse has to step on any kind of sharper objects. If you have a good thick sole underneath there, that then the horse doesn't feel that sharp stone if it was to step on a stone. And these are small little things that we don't talk about all that time because they never become an issue. So often I'm asked, well, hey, we've been doing the double strength Farrier's formula for quite some time. The horse is great. Do you think we can go ahead and stop? Well, my vote is going to always be no, because I think we're having such good results and the horse is so comfortable because we're feeding and knowing how long it takes for a horse's foot to grow and to get that good, solid, robust hoof capsule. I'm not going to vote for taking away the tools that this horse needs to grow a good, strong hoof capsule, because if we do, it takes a long time to get ourselves back where we have that good foot again. So I'm not going to really vote for that much.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we did have someone ask about the Farrier's formula and how long it takes before they start seeing results. I know that can kind of depend a little bit on the horse and the situation. If you're going to completely regrow that hoof, you're looking at about 9 to 12 months. Sometimes it can take up to a full year for that to fully grow. And a lot of times you'll start seeing that growth at the coronary band about that 3-month stage. But I know you as a farrier, you're going to see the results probably a little bit before the horse owner, because you're going to feel it.
You're right. Just right in here, right where
the zoom up real quick.
Right where this coronary band is, and this hair on this particular model we have here with us, as you see right in this area, a farrier and or potentially a veterinarian, 45 to 60 days out, they'll be able to take that owner's hand, like I can take your hand, and take your finger. I always ask, do I mind touching you first? I always ask those questions. But then you'll feel a lump. You'll feel that regeneration of horn right there. And it's actually going to be thicker here than it will. You'll feel your finger kind of go, it'll be up here, it'll be thicker, and then it drops down. So 45 to 60 days out, someone who has horses' feet and horses' hooves in their hands on a regular basis will be able to see the effect of the nutrition in there. Absolutely will.
Absolutely. All right, well, that's great. And I know that, so I guess the first step, of course, as far as these cracks and kind of helping them grow out is, of course, the nutrition. The Farrier's formula is going to help you there. It's going to help benefit that. But also know that we want to protect that new growth from, again, the bacteria that may be coming in through the hoof crack. That's the last thing you want, is to invest in a hoof supplement, and then bacteria get in through that hoof crack and start eating up all that new growth. And so I know we've got, of course, the Farrier's finish here,
sure,
and the hoof clay. You want to talk about some of that a little bit?
Sure. No, I think we have a couple. Actually, we have a couple. We have a little video, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. You want to put up the?
We can show you how to properly apply the actual Farrier's finish, and that is a hoof crack that I worked on. A little different type of hoof crack, in regards to a horse's foot, but you can see us. What we did is we cleaned it up really well, and now we're going to dip down into the Farrier's finish, always shaking it up well because it is a little thick, and just take the brush that's included with the Farrier's finish and take that brush and scrub down in that crack well, and make sure that you get anything that may be down deep. You want to get it taken care of in there.
And you can also notice, you can go over that entire hoof with the Farrier's finish. It is non-caustic, and so you can go all over that hoof with that, again, in the cracks, and just kind of, it's a good, not only, to help protect that crack, but it's great for helping prevent as well, especially in those moisture environments where we either are excessively dry or excessively wet. The Farrier's finish is going to help in that aspect. So if you feel like those cracks are happening because because of the environment, Farrier's finish is helpful there as well.
And we have another great tool, our clay.
Yeah, the Life Data Hoof Clay.
Great tool we have, and that truly
I think we got another video for that
is a great friend of the Farrier. It really has been a remarkable development here at Life Data. When it was made, and tons of attention to detail went into it when it was made. I was had the privilege to testing it on the east coast of the United States, and it was really fun to develop. And Farrier's it's just so beneficial for us.
And this is actually one of my favorites as far for cracks as well, because it packs in so well.
Sure.
So I know that's personally one of my first recommendations for those who come to me with cracks is. Well,
you make a good point, because the clay itself, when we think about a management standpoint, and we're speaking to our viewers about managing these feet,
crack right there.
The clay does not get hard. So when you think about how the clay would affect the horse's foot, it doesn't get hard in the actual separation or the crack and then cause it to get worse. It stays supple the whole time and will actually address the actual fungus and bacteria that's in that particular region of the foot. So
absolutely,
it truly has become a great tool for us. It really has in the Farrier box.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what topicals do you recommend for a toe crack? I think we just kind of answered that one. We like the hoof clay and the Farrier's finish. I think one of the big things to really look at when you're dealing with a topical is making sure that that's a non-caustic topical. Those caustic chemicals can be pretty rough and actually dry out the hoof, and could actually, correct me if I'm wrong, some of those caustic chemicals can actually make that crack worse.
Well, they can. I mean, some of them that are truly caustic will affect the actual the hoof itself. If we think about the horse's hoof, it's essentially skin, and it's dermal tissue. That's an easier way to say it. It's dermal tissue, and if you have some caustic that's affecting dermal tissue, it will then diminish the dermal tissue's quality or destroy it, and cause the condition to potentially become worse.
Absolutely. All right, so I'm going to talk about our giveaway real quick.
Sure.
And then absolutely. I'm going to open up the floor.
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck to everybody. So then I'm going to open up the floor to questions. We've had a lot of conversation going on, so if you've got a question, go ahead and resubmit it, just so I don't accidentally miss you. I'll be going through and looking at them, but if you've got a question, please go ahead and submit it, and we'll make sure to get those answered, and as many as we can. And again, if we've gone through this presentation and we've missed a question, always feel free to send us a message or to email us. But let's pop up that giveaway. So what we're going to do for this giveaway is this is kind of our total hoof care package. What we recommend, of course, is nutrition plus our topicals here. You got the Farrier's formula. It's going to grow out the hoof, going to help make the hoof stronger. And then, of course, you've got the topicals that are going to help protect that new growth. And so pretty much these three in combination are wonderful for those hoof cracks. And we're going to be giving away a set to 3 different people. So you can go to that lifedata.live/win. The secret code is hoof cracks, and that's going to basically double your entries. You've got from now until next Friday to enter. So even if you're watching this, the recording of this, you can actually still enter.
Okay. Exciting.
Absolutely. And again, I apologize for any of our international viewers. This is a U.S. only contest. Just due to those giveaway laws, we're unable to go past that. But again, it's lifedata.live/win. Enter in hoof cracks, and that'll enter you in to win.
Very good.
And so good luck, and hope you win.
I hope they do as well.
All right, let's take a look here at some of these questions we got, Darren.
Sure.
When can you use the hoof clay on a horizontal crack caused by an abscess?
You can, on a horizontal crack, You're speaking. I'll just, as I'm speaking to whoever answered this question, we'll say we're talking about a gravel or sepsis infection that's popped out at the coronary band. It first needs to be treated as a wound, and that information certainly could be obtained from your veterinarian as far as, hey, what do I do to take care of that in regards to it being a wound? Make sure it's then cleaned and taken care of, and then after that part is taken care of and it starts to move, you can just put your hoof clay right over top of it. The hoof clay won't burn it and won't hurt it in any way. It's, again, as Corbin has said earlier, it's non-caustic, and it won't do anything but keep that particular area healthy as that horizontal crack goes down toward the ground. You can put the clay in, wait a few days, go back, make sure there's no debris, take a brush, clean it out a little bit, put some more clay in, and just watch it as it continues to come closer to the ground, to the point then your farrier will be able to, he or she will be able to cut it out, cut away from the horse's foot altogether.
Absolutely.
But the clay itself is, again, it's not caustic, it's not going to burn. There's it's not like you have to wait a week or any of that nature. You just, when it first pops out, you're going to see that infected discharge, if you will, that comes out. It's that the coronary band, it gets real bulgy and angry looking. So you want to clean that and maybe even give your horse's foot a soak, get all of that out of there, and then right after that, you can start using your clay, and it won't bother it at all.
Absolutely. It's, and it's great for abscesses. We have a lot of people who use them to help in the abscess recovery as well.
Sure.
You just want to make sure that abscess is completely stopped draining, especially if you're wanting to put that with the exit wound and whatnot. But yeah, it's wonderful to use for that. After removing shoes, any recommendations to prevent any potential issues from the removal of the shoes?
Well, there's going to be a transition period when you take shoes off of a horse, especially if the horse has been used to wearing them for any period of time. A lot of that responsibility is going to fall back onto your farrier as far as he or she properly preparing that horse for transition when they trim the hoof and how they smooth the edges of the hoof wall, because the edges of that hoof wall are real sharp. Once the shoe's taken off, that area is really, really sharp. So they're going to as they trim it, they'll get in there and they'll smooth the edges of the wall around so that the horse is not exposed to hitting the ground and the wall itself chipping. It'll be a really nice, smooth wall. Will help that horse. Will keep him from getting some chips and things of that nature as they transition into barefoot.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely.
Yep.
And of course, your hoof quality is going to play a big role on that, in kind of that transition as well. And so that's a big thing to consider. All right, let's see. How can you treat a crack which is from an injury at the coronary band, the cornet band?
Well, there's going to be a difference in the sense if we're talking about a crack, either horizontal or vertical in nature. I assume they're talking about a vertical crack. However, when we think about a coronary band, we then think about horizontal crack. So I'm not sure, but there is often times where if horses have been exposed to a chronic cracking situation, the coronary band then becomes damaged, and there's scarring in the coronary band, and that the hoof capsule itself, that hard part that we see, doesn't grow properly any longer. It'll grow offset, or certainly there's horses, young horses, or even adults that may get hung in a wire fence, and they get their hoof gets cut severely at a young age, or even as an adult, and that's a scar. So that's a little bit bigger conversation about how we would manage those. Certainly they're going to be open for the bacterial fungal conversation. Make sure we protect them from that. But there are shoeing techniques and/or trimming techniques that you can use to try to help those. So that the big thing is going to be avoid the stress and avoid the pressure, so that those areas don't have lots of trouble.
Absolutely. Can the clay be used under leather pads to prevent dirt and debris from getting under the pads?
Not my recommendation. I don't like The clay is the clay that we make here at Life Data Labs is more of a treatment clay. I would not recommend you putting the clay underneath of a pad to avoid the introduction of foreign matter such as sand, dirt, rocks, or anything of that nature. What I would recommend you doing is to address the area of infection or the area that you're concerned about, apply the clay there, and then take and put in whatever kind of packing that you would use to put in underneath the leather pad, but I would take the clay first and use the clay wherever your area of concern is. Say you had a little wall separation you were worried about, or maybe you had a little subsolar abscess that's cleaning up and you wanted to address that, or maybe you even had areas along the frog that were really heavily infiltrated with thrush. Run your clay in there, just a good nice smear on either side, or in that abscess area, or in those wall separations. And then after you get your clay in, then you can backfill it with whatever type of packing material you use, whether that's a packing material that comes in a bucket, or that's your two-part acrylic packing materials we have now, or silicones, whatever the different ones, the impression materials, whatever you might like. But I wouldn't use just hoof clay, Life Data hoof clay on its own underneath of that. That's not essentially what it's designed for. It's designed to treat those areas that you have concerns about, and then put your hoof packing in underneath your pads, your leather pad.
And someone asked, are the products available in the UK? Yeah, absolutely. The hoof clay, Farrier's finish, and Farrier's formula are readily available. Of course, in the UK, the double strength is actually called the double concentrate. So it's under a different name. The Farrier's formula double concentrate can be a little bit harder to find, but the original strength Farrier's formula is readily available. So that is there. Let's see. We had one question come in. Let's see. Do horses with shoes tend to have less cracks? Does a shoe help prevent cracking at all?
The answer to that for me is going to be yes. The actual shoe, and it depending on why the horse needs to be shod, or you are shoeing the horse. But essentially, what the shoe does is it interrupts the actual rate of wear versus rate of growth. So if you have a horse that's barefoot, which so many of our horses live exceptionally comfortable barefoot, and certainly a great way to keep a horse. However, when your exercise or your horse's activity begins to exceed its rate of growth, in other words, the horse's hoof is wearing away faster than it's growing, it needs some unit of protection. We know that to be a horseshoe. When you put the horseshoe on there, then you interrupt that dynamic of wear versus growth, because now you're protecting the horse's foot and you're allowing the horse to grow out. So if you had some kind of cracking on the edges of your horse's feet, or some chipping that was going on, or maybe a little small toe crack, or you were having some different problems that you were dealing with, putting an actual shoe on it, maybe during your heightened season of riding, or when the horse is experiencing the most stress and responsibility on there, absolutely will help them.
All right. Well, we're getting towards the end of the presentation, so if you have any other lasting questions, please let us know, and we'll try to get them in real quick. Let's see, this one says, I try to clean the toe crack the best I can. Can the clay be applied even if there's a little dirt still there?
Sure. It's our efforts, again, we're all equestrians. We all know the challenges. Horses are full-time job, 24/7, 7 days a week. We don't own horses unless we have a passion, and so, yeah, you're going to do the best you can. Yeah. You do the best you can. You clean it out the best you can. You can, use safe instruments, if you will, that you're not going to pry or poke deeply. Just things. Nice wire brush goes a really, really long way. Cleaning those areas out. And yes, when that clay gets in there, whatever it's touching, it's going to take care of. Again, a week or two goes by, you clean it out, and you're trying to get it a little bit further down in there. to try to help that crack. And so, yes, we're going to ask that you try to get as much you're trying to get as much of that little bit of dust or dirt or sand or whatever you might be in terrain. You want to get as much of it out as you possibly can, but I would not discourage you from applying the clay, because the clay will help whatever it can get a hold of and whatever it touches.
And I think we have a video too of Mike where he was dealing with a deep toe crack, and actually took the finish and actually stuck it right at the toe crack and flushed out that area with the liquid.
Great point.
That helps get some of the dirt out, plus gets the active ingredients into that crack.
Great idea. Absolutely.
And so that's another option as well. All right. Well, I believe that's all the questions we have. If you have one that we missed, please submit it and let us. We can again answer you through private message, or we can talk to you over the phone. So please let us know if we missed one of your questions. But we hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. And again, thank you, Darren, for the wonderful presentation. It's great having you. It's great information.
Thank you all for logging on. It's been great to talk to everybody.
Absolutely. We've had several people comment on how great you did, and so we appreciate it.
Very nice. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Have a great weekend. Thank you.
Bye-bye now.